from our stand. We adapted this to our situation by having local intercrops, like cowpea, lapnut, velvet bean, groundnuts, and so on. And we're trying to predict the damage score that we get from this kind of strategy. Our trial design was as such. We had an area where we planted intercrops into maize stands surrounded by brachiaria as the pull factor. Then we had an area in between the trial that was planted just under conservation agriculture with maize as a buffer crop. And then when we had an area that did not have the brachiaria but the same intercrops. And again, the result of the structural equation modeling on the left, I will explain that in a minute. But what we have been doing, we have been nurturing, first of all, the alternative prey for natural enemies. In these systems, we have nurtured aphids, the Hemiptera, these are aphids, or Diptera, which are sucking flies. And those ones we have nurtured, and we, at the same time, we nurtured the natural enemies, which are mainly ants, the Formicidae, they are ants. And with this strategy, we produced a natural agent against the fall armyworm. Interestingly, the parasitoids, they were very little in this guild of natural enemies. So then we looked in the structural equation modeling again, what affects what in the system. We found a positive effect of all these intercropping systems and conservation agriculture, as well as the brachiaria, on the alternative prey. The highest number was achieved with conservation agriculture, where we had about 1.13 effect on alternative prey, but all the others also were positive. Then we had a positive effect on the predators and parasitoids, which means we are secure to say that this alternative prey was a feed for the natural enemies, which then had a negative effect on fall armyworm damage. Now, interesting as well is that the velvet bean intercropping had also a direct effect on the fall armyworm damage, which means velvet bean exudates some repellents that are very damaging or very deterrent to the fall armyworm. So where we had velvet beans, where we had very little fall armyworm damage. Another interesting initiative is this one, the pheromone traps. We don't use, in this case, pheromone traps as monitoring traps. In Zimbabwe, most of the cropping is in the summer season between November and April, where we have rainfall. From May to November, we have very little rainfall, almost only sun. So farmers plant maize in this area at this time under irrigation. That's the only time when we use irrigation. And the maize that is irrigated is sort of a host to the fall armyworm and multiplies dramatically. Very, very high rates of infestation, sometimes more than 70%. So what we were doing is we had imported from Mexico these traps that are known to be effective against fall armyworm, and we were starting to trap fall armyworm, not to monitor them, but to reduce the amounts. We, in the different traps, we captured thousands of fall armyworm in this time, and we also controlled the damage in controlled and uncontrolled fields. And you can see very obviously that trapping with a pheromone trap can be an effective way of reducing the fall armyworm damage. Now, in conclusion, several agronomic practices appear to influence fall armyworm infestation in smallholder conditions. Legume intercropping, for example, but not pumpkins, conservation agriculture, and some organic amendments. And that's mainly through the increase in the abundance of natural enemies, mainly ants, and also other enemies like spiders, but we did not found them in such a great number than we had with ants. Some maize varieties appear to be more susceptible, so it's very important to find out those that are less susceptible, and CIMMYT's breeding program is very busy working on that end. The effect of some factors appears to depend on season, because early planting and frequent breeding has an effect on how many fall armyworm can develop initially. If you have no weeds or very few weeds, then there's very little food for the fall armyworm to multiply. Yield losses also seem to depend on season, with perhaps an interaction between dry season, late planting, and high damage and yield loss. More research is though needed, in particular in farmers' conditions, because on station, we can get things very well under control. But under smaller farmer conditions, where the situation is much more different, it's more complicated, and on-farm research is really required to find solutions to smallholders under their conditions. And that was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention.